Good afternoon. Hope everybody's having a fine weekend. Excuse the wet hair, I just took a shower and I couldn't be bothered to dry it. So I thought I'd have a look, so the alt alerts that I've been looking at before, and also I want to have a look at the indices and some of the equities that are part of the indices. And I've had a kind of quick skim through earlier, but yeah, I want to check kind of whether I think the indices are going to bounce, really, because I mean they're coming like because they're blasting through. Obviously, a huge drop on Thursday, Friday, and now they're blasting through monthly demands. But they do have an annual a little bit lower, so I'm wondering if we're just going to head straight in that direction and not get the interim bounce. Surprisingly, BTC has been holding up despite. So I'll look at BTC properly in a minute, but you know, like at the moment, on all the alts and Bitcoin, I'm kind of looking at weeklies, what we're going to get as a weekly close and what we're going to get as a 2-day close. So at the moment, you can see, or 2 and 3 days. So at the moment here, Bitcoin's on the cusp of making 2-day, 3-day supply, and it has to close underneath the cross, basically, where I want it to bounce to get a weekly supply. CME just closed very, very sideways, didn't give any new supply or demand in either direction, and the Korea pair is looking slightly more like it's going to make a 2-day supply at the moment, and obviously we've still got 8 hours till the close, so we've got a way to go, and yeah, so we'll just see. I'll see what happens with that in the next few hours, but like I say, that's not my bigger concern because I'll wait until Monday's played out anyway before sort of thinking more about Bitcoin, because it's just faffing around in this range. And similarly, so we already had a weekly demand on US dollar dominance, and we may or may not get a 2-day demand today, obviously depending on what Bitcoin gives, and all the majors are pretty much the same. The dollar, go back to this, so the FX is kind of all over the place, so I'll post this on the FX Telegram as well, if anyone wants to have a look. But so obviously the dollar came down very, very deep. We have this annual demand here, which goes all the way down to 99. But it's obviously come very deep inside that now with this big tariff drop. It's actually bounced higher. I haven't looked at this today, but it's bounced higher than I remembered. It's made a weekly supply above and has this gap here to fill. So I don't know if we're going to get a bit of a push up next week. I've set some more aggressive alerts on FX, but like I say, I'm a bit wary at the moment, mainly because so we normally see the majors obviously do the opposite to what dollar's doing, and we have had that, but much less so on euro, less so again on the pound, and then a lot on Aussie. So it's kind of hard, a little bit harder to judge like if Aussie's gonna give like, so normally I would want them all at support at the same time or all at resistance at the same time, you know, in Aussie. So I don't know if, I mean, Aussie, to be fair, isn't really any support, so it can very easily go lower. But I did put an alert just underneath where the current low is, because it's got another possible support area. And then obviously if the difficulty with pound is it's made a weekly supply immediately above, it's very, very tight and obviously can go much higher inside it. But I have set an alert right at the open of that. So we'll just see. That's probably just going to go off first thing in the morning or as soon as the market opens tonight. And then Euro's made a weekly demand. So they're all a bit opposite at the moment, and I don't really like that. I mean, obviously it can just mean the Euro's stronger, and we are seeing that, like Euro Pound, Euro Aussie and Euro New Zealand are all just going crazy. But yeah, I'm wondering now, you know, I sort of made a comment in the channel last week that I thought maybe like the Euro and Yen were the two to be in. But then Euro might be changing its mind at this stage. So I guess we need to see. But I still kind of, even with the other Euro pairs, I wanted maybe a little bit more of a move. So I have a quick look at Aussie. Hopefully it's going to load. Actually should have loaded these pages before I started. So Aussie, you know, had a monthly demand and just went, and this is the problem when the monthlies, when it's tested too quickly. So you can see here it just closed and not only was a weak monthly demand, and it was still under weekly supply and various monthly supplies, but it hasn't even really tested those. So I did set an alert for the monthly demand, which just went straight through, and obviously the bigger trend is still down. But you know, with the monthly demand, I'd still at least expect maybe some sort of a reaction, but it got absolutely nothing and blasted straight through it. And also overarchingly, this is coming off annual supply as well, like from 2023, so it's a long time ago, but you know, obviously the expectation of that playing out is to take out this low anyway. but obviously that can take 2-3 years to happen. You know, it's already taken a year. So yeah, so on Aussie, yeah, I mean, it's got this weekly low just below where it bounced, so it's possible we come down there on Monday and take that out for a swing failure. So I have set an alert there, and we'll see. But obviously then there's, you know, various 12 hours, 4 hour, another 12 or 8 hours, or whatever the blue 12 and 8 hours below. So I don't know if it's going to drop deeper into this, but you can watch that for a swing failure. And then with Euro tending to be opposite Euro Aussie, that's now in 2-day supply, but again has this giant candle, so how much it's going to go up in there, I'm unsure. And as I said, Aussie US came off annual supply. This has come off 6-month demand, so again, it's not surprising it's had such a big move. Yeah, Aussie CAD, like for confluence with Aussie CAD, again, this has another, again, similar sort of weekly low here that we could head for, but it may also swing fail at the current level, so I guess we'll see. Just for the more aggressive alerts, just to update those, because they're gonna, like I say, probably hit first thing in the morning. So pound, for example, so pound, we had a really nice, so what's kind of happened here is that we've got this accumulation and then manipulation and expansion. You know, we've taken out all the lows of that accumulation now. Would have preferred that maybe to have come down into the 4 hour, but again, like I say, it's made this weekly supply immediately above. And they're difficult, you know, and I still think they're worth alerting. They're 50-50, you know, some of these, and I've said, you know, see if it gives an instant reaction, but you know, it's got a 4 hour in here and a 2 hour up there that hasn't been tested, so it could go significantly higher inside if it wants. But sometimes when you see these close, they get an immediate reaction on the Monday morning. So it's worth watching, but they are maybe 50-50, but if they do get that immediate reaction, it tends to be a decent one. So I would say keep an eye on that, but obviously it's fairly high risk, and the whole market is pretty high risk at the moment because we don't really know. And you know, we may also have got gaps over the weekend, so it's really going to be dependent on what gaps have come in. Euro the same, got, you know, it's come off supply, 2 week supply there, and given a nice short if you already got into that, but now has this weekly demand. But given, you know, okay, it's closed with a weekly demand, whereas the pound didn't. Or actually, the pound from the previous week had a weekly demand, but it's now gone back through it. But again, like if this is an accumulation manipulation, this could again drop straight back through that zone. And then I was considering possibly putting alert on this 4 hour, or else waiting till down there, but you know, we'll see what happens here. But again, this isn't an annual supply, so, you know, is it? I'm very indecisive on these now. You know, like an annual supply I would normally expect to play out for a lower low, but obviously the market's being slightly unusual at the moment. And it's when you get that unusual news that you see zones break. Excuse me. So, I don't know, you know, if this is enough to get zones to break, and the same with the indices, which I'll get onto in a minute. What else? Like New Zealand also had a drop, like Aussie wasn't as significant. It's still well, but again, I mean, but it has held at the moment monthly demand. But at New Zealand, I still again would like, ideally would have liked, and I still wanted even back here for this low to get taken out, you know, but it's got some significant lows down here. You know, so is it going to break down these lows and then, you know, potentially break a lot lower? And similarly is also didn't quite test where I would have wanted it to, like the annual level here, and or 3 month, 2 month supply is higher. But you know, again, it's come off a weekly supply and is in a downtrend. You know, again, got the short from the high with one of the alerts. So again, it's the indecision. It might create monthly demand, and yeah, like Aussie, go straight through it, or it might hold here for another run up. But you just need to watch the lower time frames on these. But yeah, like I said, the alerts on that are a bit lower. On the flip side, then we've got a new 4 hour demand on Aussie Swiss franc, Aussie CAD, and Aussie yen. So again, I've alerted some of those just more aggressively, just to see what we get on Monday morning. As you know, the dollar just going to suddenly, because this hasn't really risen much given how much the dollar's gone back up again. And the same, like I feel like the euro hasn't gone down enough for how much the dollar went back up, so I don't, yeah, but it should be calculated from it, so it's confusing. But again, just see what reaction we get there on that. Yen, similarly, I mean, the yen cross pairs are a little bit all over the place for me. Like they all have 2 monthly supplies, So I think I'm kind of overarchingly bearish, but then they're all taking their sweet time about it. And also they're in 6-month demand at the low. So again, that's throwing me off. Obviously Aussie yen came down a lot, and I wouldn't mind that going lower. Dollar yen hit the level, my more aggressive alert. But then again, I wouldn't have minded this to come back into the 6-month for a retest, the weekly and the 6-month just a little bit below that low. So again, are we gonna, I've put an alert for it. It's actually got an 8-hour in there as well. I put an alert, I think, on the 2-hour demand in this, been slightly, because it felt like 4 hours was too aggressive, but our hourly demand here I put an alert for. But again, now has a weekly supply immediately above, so again, it's maybe a little bit too close for comfort, but are we going to get, maybe, just move down into here, up into there for the rejection before getting that zone, or is it just going to fall off tomorrow morning? Not sure. And a lot of it's going to be dependent on whether the dollar's going to hold the weekly supply. But yeah, so like I say, just a few more of those more aggressive alerts that I just wanted to talk about. And I think Euro yen was the only other one with the more aggressive. So again, this has made a weekly supply. It has closed back below this candle, and it does have a 2-month at the same level. So again, it's a zone I kind of thought that was worth watching. But again, it's a very big zone, and there's a big wick in it, and there's nothing low time frame in here to really trade. So plus it's closed as a swing failure of this low, so it's not ideal. But again, just see if it kind of rolls off here on Monday morning for a bigger drop. But that's going to obviously probably follow the euro, so the euro is going to need to do that bigger drop as well. And I'm just not 100% sure it's ready, whether the Euro Aussie and Euro New Zealand can maybe do another little push higher for Monday, Tuesday. What else? Dollar CAD I think is just messy as well. I mean, it's all just messy for me. I had an alert that went in on Dollar CAD on Friday that it went in, the alert went off a little bit earlier, and it only hit that at the end of the day. It was for 12-hour/4-day supply, but the 4-day was slightly preemptive because it hadn't confirmed the 4-day at that stage, this pink line. So again, we might come up a bit higher in here. We've also got an untested 8-hour right at the top here, which just missed my alert on this previous candle. So again, I've also still got that alert set up there in case it pushes up inside. And then similarly, I put the 4-hour demand alert down there if we get the retest. But yeah, I need to see a lot more of this play out, I think. Then we've got huge drop on silver. I'm not really sure why that happened. I haven't read the news on this. Let me see if there's any news. COMEX silver ends the week 16% lower. And American silver down 11%. So it's not really saying why. Let's see if there's actually anything written in here. No, it's not going to load for me. Excuse me. So let's remove my drawings so we can see what we're doing. So overarchingly, again, this does have an annual demand down here, either 24 or if it came off the top, 26.5, but is also an annual supply. So again, I have been bearish while we were in annual supply. It did come off that once and obviously had a significant drop off it, so it's possible it runs through it this time, or at least runs and takes out that high. Oh gosh, I hope I'm not going to start coughing a lot now. But you see here, it's created this 3-month demand. And it's just running straight through it, so I had an alert off the top of that. But again, as I said earlier, you don't really want it to test immediately. But if it does, it can get the immediate reaction. In this case, it hasn't. It's coming down quite a lot deeper inside. It's got a couple of equal lows there, and I think some equal lows lower on the lower time frame. So I don't know if it's just going to come down and take out some of these stops, or maybe it's simply done. I mean, it's not exactly a blow off top on this, but like I say, it's in this annual supply, so it could just be a correction of this up move for a bigger drop. So I just need to see, again, a bit more of it play out. So I think basically overarchingly, we're kind of, other than the Aussie dollar, which has broken something, or just continued its existing downtrend like this, while it's still in 3-month demand, it's got a 2-month a little bit lower. So like I say, those equal lows I've alerted on the black crosses, until it sort of breaks all this, closes below, creates a new supply, perhaps a monthly, if we've still got 3 weeks to go, but perhaps it creates this as a monthly supply, then, you know, it's still in a bullish uptrend on the 3-month chart. It has created a weekly supply, so you know, I have put an alert for the weekly up there. We did get the short, so I did have a preemptive short, which I've hidden the crosses now, but short of getting off the swing fail of this size. So well done if you got into that, and congratulations if you actually stayed in it, because you know these moves are very, very uncommon. Vast, you know, 1-2 daily candles of so 16% drop on I think that was an equities. So this is, but yeah, this is a 14% drop in the couple of days, 14 and 16, probably 16 from the high. But obviously that doesn't normally happen. Normally we get sort of slower drops than this. So, but yeah, so I really just want to see on Monday what momentum we have and if the momentum is going to keep up. Yeah, let me just check my Twitch. Yeah, and see if the momentum's going to continue. But yeah, obviously don't generally recommend knife catching, but if you want to scalp on the lower time frames, then that's up to you. And we'll see. Gold obviously did have a drop as well, but nowhere near the extent of silver. Dinner 4-day demand has a weekly below that I've also got alerted. So again, just need to see what the reaction is off this tomorrow or tonight. New daily supply, which I have alerted this time in case it is going to get that bigger retracement or bigger reversal. Preferably it would break this zone first before testing that, but again, we'll see later in the week. So yeah, that's kind of FX. So like I said, I'm a little bit indecisive, and some more aggressive alerts and some less, but I really just want to see the first few days to play out first. Hi Aussie man, hope you're doing well. Okay, so the indices, I have updated these charts, just wait till this updates. So the indices just been like really obviously huge drops, and I had alerts throughout because they had monthly demands, 2 monthly demands, 3 monthly demands. Silver erased 3 months of gains in 2 days. Is it 3 months? That's, yeah, it's impressive, isn't it? I don't even know why. I need to research that. Like, I don't know why silver and like Aussie, I think, had a bigger drop because of China and the Chinese retaliation on tariffs, and the China tariffs obviously affect Aussie dollar a lot as well. But I don't really know why silver had such a strong reaction. Other than, but you know, from a TA perspective, other than it was coming out of annual supply. So I don't know, maybe it's finally the annual supply really kicking in, you know, when it takes its time and then finally just dies. Anyway, so on to the indices, which also have all died. Like I said, they've died, but they are all in major zones. So it's just the case of, you know, Dow, we've got in 3 month demand, there's a 2 month inside, and it's come, you know, significantly down inside it, and the same with all of them. But again, like on these high time frames, we need to see the closes, and are we going to create new supplies? You know, so the Dow was, you know, actually very, very clean, you know, and for a change, you know, came neatly off that monthly supply that it created, just tapped the level and fell off it. So the thing with these, so is while we're blasting through 3 monthly demands and stuff, we've got annual demands not that far below. So those are kind of what I'd like, if you're investing in these, like I would be waiting for the annual demands to hit. You know, we may get bounces early this week. You know, maybe we come and take out these lows, I don't know. And then we just need to see the reaction of these annual zones. Like, are they going to dip inside? You know, watch the fibs. The 50 obviously is near the top, 61's a little bit lower, and this coincides with 2 month, 3 month demand inside. So, you know, spread your investments out if that's the case. And, you know, then if we do start to break annual demand, then we have serious problems. But at this stage, you know, can we say that? Like, I was looking back, so let me go over. So I've looked at a lot of stuff this weekend, which is why I was a bit quiet yesterday. So I have, so the charts I'm using are forex.com for these, because that's what I trade if I trade them. But some of these other ones have a lot more history. I don't think I have, oh no, I do have a history one on the Dow. I'm actually not sure if I looked at this. And I think that, like, what I find is the real challenge, so I didn't look at this actually because obviously I haven't charted it, but is, so obviously I trade supply and demand, and if I trade supply and demand, like I trade zones as and when they're hit. So if they don't hit, like, so in the case of COVID, we came through this zone, but you know, we never tested this annual zone quite, nor do we test the lower annual zone. We may test this one. So, even while I say, okay, well, I would like to buy the Dow when it gets back in here, maybe it won't, because, these don't like to retest very, very often. And I worry also, and, you start to get into that sort of nervous state of mind that if, at that point that it does test, maybe that's the point, maybe now it's finally, having had, what's this though? This actually doesn't have that much history from 2003. So 2008, it's been going up. Maybe now is finally when it's going to have its, that we're going to have our big recession and it's going to roll over. So here it did tap into the 6 month. But yeah, I suppose we have to again trade zones as and when they're hit. But I think that was what I was thinking when I did look at so Nasdaq, which I think I have a lot more history for. And again, it's amazing if you look at it on, if you look at it on the linear scale, it just looks crazy. If you look at it on the log scale, it really doesn't look that bad. So it's interesting. And if you look at it on the log scale, so back in here in 88, 1990s, for the most part it was testing zones, and then we just suddenly have a string of, green candles for 6 months, and similarly since, since the global financial crisis in 2009, it's been predominantly green. So, here I would have said, okay, wait for 4,400 to get your entry, and it never came back. And then here, I think, I do remember I called these 6 month zones on these, and then later, I think 2 month or whatever, and that was after the COVID drop. No, so I wasn't charting it back then. So Nasdaq, in fact, was the only one, I think, after this drop in 2022 that didn't actually hit. I think it hit the 3 week zone in here, but all the others at this time hit these major monthly demands. And there was really, really nice confluence. So, Nasdaq was the only one that was making me slightly nervous and was slightly off. But look at so I think there was a little 3 week in here, and that's where this picked up support. But again, it's challenging, and I had the same. So I looked through all the equities today, and I had the same challenge. It's kind of like we wanted to hit this zone, but it doesn't have to. And the equities are not as reliable on supply and demand. Although I think if they do hit the zones, they get the bounce. You've been warning people there is a weakness in the stock market since December, but nobody listened. Well, it's difficult, isn't it? Because, at this point, it just kept, and I was saying the same. I think I remember I was saying to my brother at this point, it was around December, when we broke the high, I kind of remember saying, be a bit wary now because we've just hitting this high on Nasdaq. And it's still gone up. That was actually, no, that was December 2023, so that was the start of last year, but we've still had a year of up since then. So, and a significant move up. So, yeah, 35%. And again, obviously it looked like it was weakening off here and did finally make a double top, but it's like, I credit to you if you managed to read this, but, this is not the best chart to look at anyway, because it's choppy, but... I think when you were asking me about it, it was kind of like, well, it hasn't broken structure yet. But the problem is then by the time it does break structure, it didn't really give it a retest, which then makes it a lot harder. So it's given the retest finally March, but that's after, the decent retest is still after a 12% drop. So, yes, you should be scaling out, but I think I look at this and I think it's incredibly hard, really. And like I say, credit to you if you manage to get that. But so overarchingly with these, I want Nasdaq in this annual zone. And Nasdaq did actually test the annual, but possibly, I think also a nice trade would be potentially swing failing the lows from last year. So I think all of them look like that's the possibility now. So I was looking at S&P again, the bigger picture, and the declines it has had, an 84% decline in, but that's in 1930, and then a 50% decline in 74, a 60% decline in 2008. But again, is this ready for a big decline now? It's got the catalyst of craziness going on in the US. But again, if you look at it on the log scale, it really doesn't look that bad. And certainly, yes, it was a giant drop last week, but in the grand scheme of things, that's not really a giant drop. If we look at it on the linear scale, it looks a lot more concerning. And you know, and I listened to a YouTube video earlier as well, and somebody was like, you know, well, it's up only, it's like it's going to keep going up, it'll bounce and it'll go back up again. And I suppose, yes, that is the assumption you have to make, given that's what it always does. But from my perspective, it also there comes a point where it doesn't anymore. And I wonder, you know, are we at that point? And what's going to make me feel we're at that point? And I think, you know, for me, it's going to be like if we break the annual demand, which would just be obviously. That's going to be a 45% drop. 45-ish% drop. Then we'd have to flip the annual demand to supply, and then obviously I think, okay, we're going to have a significantly long depression / bear market. So I deleted that line earlier anyway. Maybe I didn't save this with the... So yeah, and I was looking at, you know, possible retracements. You know, if we take this as the last up move, which again looks massive on the linear chart, but on the log chart, in the grand scheme of things, isn't really, you know, it's just that last up move. If we come down to 50% of that, you know, that's a reasonable retracement from a TA perspective into this annual demand that was never tested at 2000. But that's a 50% drop, and again, that will tally with previous drops. If we come down to the 50% just of the smaller up move, so since the COVID drop, that tallies quite nicely. Well, 50% and 61% tallies quite nicely with the 6 month demand. But again, that's going to break the annual, which isn't ideal. If we then look only at the up move since the last significant correction 2 years ago, then again, we could just come into the top of this annual demand, and we need to see what happens. But, you know, is this ready to do a giant correction of 10 years of up? I don't know. And does anybody know? Yeah, so provisionally what I'd be waiting for is, you know, we need to see the reaction here on the annual demand. We've got various ideally off the top of it, we've got various 2-3 months inside it, and a monthly or 2 months down the bottom there. And if I've updated this properly, yeah, so there's 2 months down the bottom and there's a 2 month here, so we might dip inside this into the 45 or 4K areas. If we then start flipping supply, it becomes more of an issue. And the other issue is we've now got monthly supply above here. And as we saw the reaction on the Dow when it tested that monthly, so obviously it can still be a very nice drop if, you know, if it does get a bounce off this annual and goes back up, there's 25% rise that you can get into there. But, you know, we look here, this is when we created monthly supply, and then we did have a year of down. I don't know if there's any other time that we've created a monthly supply where we haven't rejected it. I'm not sure, maybe here. So again, that's 2018, you know, it did make a monthly supply in here and then did go back through it, flipped it. And any others through here? No. Debatably here. Yeah, so, oh, and then there's some probably back earlier on, like here, for example, you see a decent drop down, but it came straight back into monthly demand and then went straight back up through that supply. So really need to see what those reactions are. Let's go back to, so yeah, I was just generally like looking through all these ones with the more history just to see. I don't think it's got that much more history. Let me put this back on the Dow anyway. So get all my drawings back on, my mess. Obviously you can see we're just ploughing through this 3 month zone here, but it could pick up, you know, it is back now at the start of the impulse, it could pick up support here. So I'm certainly not shorting these at this point in time, and you know, if you see some sort of a retracement, and yeah, so hold on, let me read what you're saying, Aussie man. Down only is usually followed by Fed pivot and back to QE and lower interest rates, so we probably remain bearish till then. Also depends on Trump policies. But for now, the trend has clearly shifted. It has clearly shifted, yeah. I guess I'm conscious of the situations like COVID here, where, you know, this was 2 months actually, so it's obviously not 2 months. But where we have 2 giant candles down, a significant drop, and then it just doesn't care anymore and just goes straight back up again. You know, in the grand scheme, this isn't really, this isn't anywhere near as big so far, but also it's not 2 full months yet, it's like more 2 days. And also, you know, again, we've got this annual demand right below, so Like, I don't know, your comment on down only is usually followed by Fed pivot back to QE. Like, I don't have knowledge of that, so I can't comment. I normally just go on the chart. And these charts, like I say, I do find harder than any other, because they have this up only thing, whereas FX, I prefer the fluctuations and the cyclical nature. These are harder because, you know, obviously demand is significantly stronger than supply for the most part. And also you just need time for things to play out. And we have got, you know, 2 days of significant down, but this obviously, as I said when you asked me about it last week, you know, that I wanted it to bounce and see the retests, and, you know, we got those retests, but not up at the start of the up move. But then I guess if the price is, if it's ready to die, then it's not going to retest. So anyway, that was Dow and in general. So S&P similar. We're in monthly demand, 2 monthly demand, come into that here. We've got the annual a little bit lower. So whatever these do this week, whether or not we open, you know, so I know we need to see obviously whether we're going to open with a gap up or a gap down, because it's probably going to give us one or the other. And so far it's been down for the most part. Given the momentum, I would expect down, but you never know. And, you know, then just see what PA we get, and are we just going to get a bearish retest, or are we going to get a significant push, an impulsive push up? But, you know, my preference is to look for shorts higher and then longs a bit lower. But now is certainly a time that longs you can enter longs if you want to, if you see the lower time frames, but you are this stage just on knife catching. Nasdaq similar, you know, I commented that we'd broken the trend line here. You know, obviously it did pop back up over a bit because that's what happens. But again, this Nasdaq didn't get up into any significant supply either. This chart is significantly messy because I kept all my 8 and 12 hour zones from below. But again, this is not far off. I've got an alert here for the 2 week demand, and it's because it's the breakout level, it's the previous all-time high. But again, then the annual's a little bit inside that. So, and what I'm really going to look for is the confluence of these when they hit, because I think, you know, previously when we've had lows, you know, it's the others, like back here for example. I think that was a significant one. You know, obviously we got a bounce, we got a double bottom, and it took, when's that, October to December, it took 3 months before we actually got a reversal back down there. But also that had 6 months of, or actually almost a year of down, or 10 months for the first hit, and then a year. Whereas now, obviously, we haven't had a year of down, we've just had a few months. So I don't know if it's going to be the same. You think gap up, William? Yeah, perhaps, I don't know. I don't follow the gaps of this on this so much. But I guess we haven't got that long to find out, a few hours. Do I think BTC is just lagging behind equities? Not sure. I mean, I wouldn't call it lagging behind. I still want BTC lower, but I don't necessarily think I think if it's going to follow, it just follows. So I don't necessarily think it will drop because equities have dropped. Indices to buy this week coming off non-farm. Yeah, perhaps, I don't know, but non-farm dumped it. I tend to find, I don't know about indices, but what I've said to other people when they ask me about non-farm payroll, I kind of say, well, normally it's continuation. It's the one news that tends to be very unwise to trade against. I think my sense is, at least for FX, I don't know about indices, but that if it goes one direction and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, at least, if not longer, it will continue, and then maybe you'll get the reversal later in the week, or it just continues. I don't know if the case is the same for indices, because I can't recall. I used to have a great indicator that showed me, I don't know, I haven't got it in there at the moment, but it showed me all the news on the chart, but unfortunately whoever developed the indicator stopped updating it last year, so it now has lots of lines and colours from 3 years ago, but nothing current. But it was great because it made you were able to look at what happened to each of the news scenarios. But anyway, yeah, so Nasdaq the same, it's in 2 monthly demand. Yes, you might be right, could get the bounce now. Oversold to buy back to levels on higher time frames. Oversold to buy back to levels on higher time frames. Not sure what you mean by that. I mean, oversold, yes, very probably. Do you think, so what are your views, William? Do you think this is going to just go back up now, and you think we're just going to make a new high, or do you think this is the start of a bearish depression or recession or whatever you want to call it. Interested. Anyway, that's Nasdaq. Let me know your thoughts on that. J225, pretty much the same scenario. So I did have an alert here for the 6 month, but it was a retest of the 6 month because again, it can, when it's come down deep inside it, then pick up the level again. Obviously, it's come deeper. Similar with the others, it has an annual demand significantly lower, 29,500 or so. So again, would like to see that hit. Russell, I think, so Russell, again, this has had 3 month demand. Russell, I was always more bearish on anyway, like it had the double top and swing fail of the all-time high. So the expectation based on this double top is that we're going to take out this low for me. Again, would have liked to get some sort of like retracement. Sorry, just checking comments. Would have liked to get some sort of a retracement on this in order to get a short entry in, because it hasn't, other than up until again last week. I was hoping to get a test up here of this new 2 month supply that was put in, but again the wick was just below my alert. And again, so now on a few of these I have put some short entries on. I haven't commented on those, but you know, sort of 1 day weekly supply, things like that, just to see if we get the lower high, if we do get a bounce. Seeing what William's saying, yes, strength coming back into indices this week, weakness on the money markets. Yeah, okay. So you don't think we're going to get a lower low? You think we're just going to go, the low has already been put in on these? So this, yeah, do have a slightly more aggressive alert on the weekly on Russell here. So again, if the low has been put in or close to the low and just enough to maybe take out the low on Monday, Tuesday before a retracement, this could bounce a little bit lower here, and all from where it is now. And this doesn't have an annual demand, so like I say, my preference is for it ultimately to take out this low. 4 hour time frame is a great chart to analyze. Yes. Yeah, I mean, I do. So obviously when I'm trading myself, I do use much lower time frames. So for the sake of these streams and for the sake of being able to set the alert, so I don't set alerts typically on 4 hour time frames just because it's too much. So all the green that you see here, these greens are 1 hour, 2 hour, and the orange is 4 hour. But yeah, so I mean, but when I look at these on the lower time frames, yes, you can see that they're starting to try and consolidate, and here they were at the end of the day on Friday. But for me, I'm not seeing anything having broken a local supply yet, so that's why I'm not bullish yet. While I'm conscious that they are all in zones that they could pick up support, for me, I need to see some supply broken. And until then, I expect a downtrend. Indices can be significantly harder than the FX from that perspective, because they can just run without giving the retests. But then for me, that's just something I just don't trade. But yeah, anyway, so Russell potentially, if we just get a little drop lower, but this aligns much less well with the other indices. So slightly more wary of this one, but again, could just come down and take out this low for a swing failure. Euro 50, you won't be trading Forex till it settles down. Yeah, probably very wise, me neither. I'm mostly focusing on crypto and alts at the moment, but I kind of just wanted to look at these because we had such a crazy move. EU's the same. You just love the US 30 opening bell, yeah. I mean, I normally just look at it in the context of Bitcoin, but yeah, it is crazy. Well, the US 30 actually, I much prefer trading the US 30 to Nasdaq and S&P. I find it much more reliable, and at least it does a little bit more its own thing. But then also from that similar perspective, Nasdaq and S&P kind of do the same thing. So then you can use the confluence of the two. And US 30 is sort of hit and miss, 50-50. It might follow the others, but it can also do its own thing. So EU obviously is in another 3 month demand, but again, this is looking more like, you know, the pound, how I just described the pound, and the euro, that we've got this accumulation, potentially manipulation and an expansion that could go back through. And again, this has 3 months demand. I've got the next alert out and 1 year inside, which is significantly lower. And so I don't necessarily think these are going to head straight down to there, although it's always possible. Like, yes, I would like a retracement, yeah, and we need to see if we're going to hold the higher low, because at the moment I'm assuming this is an accumulation, manipulation, expansion, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. It's still in that demand. Aussie was the one that's kind of the most interesting because it's the first one to hit that annual zone. Again, real significant drop. It's hard to get into. It was holding, but it kind of, and then eventually it's blasted through. I think it had, 3-month and monthly demand up here, and it's blasted through all of those. But like I said, it's that first one to get to that major zone. So it'll be interesting if that can pick up, and or if we start to see this break down. You love the trend continuation strategy built a few months ago. Based on what? So yeah, anyway, we'll see what happens with Aussie. So that's already in a zone of interest. And then finally, FTSE is similarly, looks like that accumulation, manipulation, expansion. Again, I had an alert for taking out those two lows there. So we can see if this opens, gives a swing failure on open today. But again, has, what's this next alert? 1 day demand. Oh yeah, so this one was a bit hit and miss on. So it does have offset annual zones a bit lower, and I think there's a 2-month in there and a 3-month in there that haven't been tested on this previous test, but does have this breakout level that was the all-time high from back in 2018. There's a daily demand in here that hasn't been tested, so again, I was just wondering if we might get a drift down into this level and or lower. So I've got a couple of more aggressive alerts on that, but we'll see. And then on these, I just want to see the retests. But just a quick look at the equity components, because those are what I was running through earlier. So I'll do the Dow first, because that was I then actually went off to kind of think I didn't have the components of the Dow. I hadn't updated them for a while, and I was slightly off. So I've added like American Express, but I haven't charted this yet. But again, from a supply-demand perspective, and my concern with these is from a supply-demand perspective, like these have a lot lower they can fall. First day rise or drop, set on your hand, right? Anyway, so American Express, obviously it's got significantly lower it can fall if it wants to, but doesn't have to, because, and so again, that's the challenge with the equities, is they don't always come back and test where you want them to test. In this case, actually, it looks like it has every time. Maybe slightly off there, or a lower time frame, but I think when I was looking at the Dow stocks more than anything, I was thinking these have further they can drop. So Boeing, Boeing's just messy anyway, and is one of the more bearish ones. But certainly, yes, I can see this dropping from here, and it's actually got a yearly supply. It's coming off. Chevron again is coming off 6 months. It's been sideways for quite a while, but obviously now potentially could hold up support here yet again. But I would not be buying this until I saw lower. Walt Disney again, I just added this earlier and only briefly charted it. But again, obviously this looks like it's got the potential to go a lot lower if it wants. Maybe it's really not liking the Snow White debacle. Goldman Sachs is on a monthly demand here, but again, the annual is fairly significantly lower still, but that's potentially a buy. Home Depot, again, now has made a double top, so this for me could have a much bigger drop if it wants to, but even if it doesn't, it's got 2 months and 6 months demand, but still some space, plus a new monthly supply in there. Johnson & Johnson, I think similar. More of a sideways consolidation. This was tested just above the annual zone, so I don't know, this one's a bit more indecisive for me. JP Morgan's looking fairly ugly, again still in 2 months demand, but if it wants to come down to the yearly, it's got a lot lower it could go. Coca-Cola is one of the stronger ones, but again now is possibly at the point of a double top, so you can see that going lower. So none of these are really, only a couple of them are at decent zones that I would consider a buy on. MasterCard a little bit lower, but again, potentially would be a buy coming into there. Looking for my... Merck, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, is now down in that annual demand. So again, this is a possible buy, but is this going to have a bigger retracement? Again, like now, so this retracement we had back previously eventually came down to the 70-78 fib. Okay, hold on, what's William saying? Wait on the right time of day, wait on pattern on small time frames or candlestick pattern. What's the EC? And Bob's your uncle running for previous day high or low target? 80 plus SNR. Not sure exactly what you mean. What do you mean 80 plus and what do you mean EC? So again, like if this is doing a retracement of that whole up move, yes, it's an annual demand, but if it wants to come down to the 61 or even lower, like this came down to the 61.70, that could certainly go to the lower annual demand if it wants to. So anyway, like I won't go through every single one of them, but yeah, like all the Dow stuff pretty much was kind of slanting me towards more down. Engulfing candle, okay. The Nasdaq stuff is looking ugly, but I was a little more indecisive because again, they're like not dissimilar to the actual indices themselves, as they are in major demands, although they could still obviously go lower, and the annual levels are still a bit lower. But so in the case of Apple, we're out of 6-month demand, 3 month inside it. It's made a monthly supply, so I'm not confident that these aren't going to have at least some time. So yes, while we may get a bounce now-ish or soon, like a little bit lower, then are we just going to get a rejection here for more down or at least more sideways before another up move? Are people going to be quite scared now we've had such a significant drop? And also the impact of Trump. Fundamental analysts have been warning for a long time that American stocks are overvalued, but it took a long time to play out. Yes, agreed. Yeah, and I hope people say the same. And I think it's that like when you compare to the dollar as well, like it's mostly inverse to the dollar. The stocks are mostly inverse to the indices are mostly inverse to the dollar, but not always. And I was reading some people were saying that that they were clearly going up, but there was nothing. It was hot air behind their rise because they didn't have the earnings to support it. But like I said, it's not my forte. I haven't got the time or energy to go fully into every individual company. But obviously they have had significant up moves without retracement for quite a while. Even the 21-22 retracement was decent, but then we've been going up since when? January 2023. But again, like for me, I find it hard because, you do look back at the history of these and they can go up for very, very long periods of time before having a significant retracement. And even then, is it really that significant a retracement when you look at it like this? And 22 to 23 was a decent retracement. But, maybe they all should really have made double tops and they all just got pushed more beyond that than they should have done. I don't know. Anyway, so Amazon's on this annual demand as well, so it's come back down inside the 3 month there, but is in annual. So are we going to get a pickup here of a big move, or is it going to drop deeper inside it? So yeah, Nasdaq I think they're looking more okay, more acceptable than the Dow stocks. William, wait on pullback and enter with 50% of the 1% bank used each trade, 3 to 4 trades each major FX pairs, and you're being successful, I trust. Good if it's working for you. So yeah, on Google here, could go a little bit lower into that annual demand, but it's not far off hitting. So the Nasdaq stuff, if things do pick up the annual demands, most stuff is not too far off it now. Microsoft maybe a little bit lower to go, and yeah, it's kind of coming through the monthly there, so that could go a touch lower. That's good. Meta is on 2 month demand, so obviously if it does come down to the annual, it can go a lot lower, but at the moment is now just holding a 2 month demand. Netflix also is another one that can go lower, but doesn't have to, and again, that, like I say, that's the challenge. So these are starting to look slightly ropey, but they're not all of them. So in the case of this, is Netflix gonna just hold a weekly demand? Is that done? Doesn't necessarily look done compared to how some of the other things are looking very much done. NVDA is obviously looking more ropey than some of the others, but again, just coming straight back into monthly demand. So anyway, yeah, these probably aren't. MicroStrategy is probably the only one that's still strong, because obviously it's a question of whether this is going to catch up with Bitcoin or this is just going to follow what Bitcoin's doing. So, excuse me, I have my other chart on this, on the other layout. But yeah, it does have monthly supply, but obviously it's taking its time falling off that, if it's going to fall off it. But again, if it does want to fall down into this 3 month demand, could have a bit of a distance. Are you now trying to sell your products on my stream, or sell your group on my stream? That's considered quite politically incorrect, you know. But that's fine. It is what it is. If you're successful, then people should follow you. Let me just put this chart back to Nasdaq. So yeah, anyway, the summarized version of the indices is huge drop. Would like to say we're going to get a retracement, certainly in zones where it might happen, but so far for me, not very little sign of it. So we need to see what happens the first few days of next week, and yeah, whether they're going to start to pick up some support. And I need to make some sort of a decision on my my Australian superannuation, whether I'm going to take it out of cash and put it back in or not, or wait for longer. And if I have to wait, should I wait for, you know, a 10-year recession, or should I just try and get in on a bounce on these? Not sure. You have 5 strict rules to apply. So what are your rules then? Tell me. Thank you. I appreciate you loving my analysis. Nice to have some appreciation, but I enjoy doing the stream, so I don't really mind. Yeah, so on like I've already commented on Bitcoin, so that's generally on crypto. We have the potential for 2 and 3 day supply, potential for 2 and 3 day demand on US dollar dominance. The other things I was looking at a lot earlier were the totals. So last week we had Total 2 and others made weekly supply by a hair, or Total 2 I think slightly more so because Ether's been so nasty and weak. But it's looking like it. So I've drawn all the zones in at the moment. And is this falling a lot? Is Bitcoin falling down again? Yeah, while I'm looking at it. So yeah, so but it's looking at this stage, and I've drawn all the zones in, but even though we haven't confirmed it, but it's looking at this point that we might make new weekly supply on all of the market cap charts along with the local 2-day. So I would say again, be very careful at the start of this week. You know, that downtrend is still in place. So yeah, Total 2, you can see there, that's the weekly in the bright blue, and then the possibility of a 2-day. Total 2, like I said, was already weaker, so already had the weekly supply, which it's rejected off this week and is coming down lower. So as I've said previously, you know, these are all still in demand, you know, like I'm not necessarily bearish on them. Where is the rest of the chat? Why can't you see them? Because, so I'm running multiple streams. I have a stream on YouTube, like horizontal, and I have a stream on YouTube vertical, which I think is what you're on. Are you on the vertical? Who's on the vertical and who's on the horizontal? No, you're on the horizontal, Aussie man. William's on the vertical, and then I also have Twitch, but nobody's talking to me on Twitch. Nobody watches on Twitch. And we live in hope that somebody will come. But yeah, that's why you can't see the chat, because and I have a little thing on my OBS that shows me both of you at the same time. But yeah, that's why you're not seeing his comments. Yeah, so anyway, as I've said, you know, these again are in these weak demands. I've commented a number of times that we've got this potential double top pattern, which makes me very, very nervous for the crypto market, and has made me nervous for Ether for quite a long while. And so, but until we break this demand, I'm not going to be like full on bearish. But there aren't really any signs that are making me bullish at the moment. That's for sure. And yeah, until I see some, you know, at least, well, like it doesn't have to be a weekly, because the weekly can be a bit lagging on this, but until I start to see 3-day, 4-day, 5-day reversals, like I've tried a few, but most of them, and like I'll go on to the alts in a bit, but most of them are failing. Or just giving little bounces for a couple of days. All colors, support and resistance, all time frames, yes. So brown is monthly, bright blue is weekly, mid blue is daily or 2-day, purple is 3-day, 4-day, 5-day, or the pink line is 4-day, 5-day, the purple line is 3-day, yeah. So I have all them, I always know that no matter what time frame I'm looking at, what zone I'm in. And yeah, I find it, like for me, I found it super helpful, because if I'm then, you know, for example, I wouldn't trade this chart obviously, but let's say I was trying to trade this chart on the 4-hour, you know, if I'm looking at it like this, I'll sometimes forget that I'm in, you know, maybe I'm trying to short this. And then I kind of go, okay, the whole thing's brown. Why is it brown? So at least I can zoom out, or at least I can see here that I'm actually trying to short in a monthly demand. So I know it's like high risk what I'm doing. Doesn't mean you don't have to do it, because obviously in this case, you know, all the structure is still pointing towards down, daily in there as well. So anyway, yeah, so on total 2 already had the weekly, total 3 is going to create a weekly, at this stage is looking like it will create a new weekly supply and a 2-day in there. So total 3 is the one that probably makes me a bit more nervous, because while it's on the top of this 3-month, if it does fall, it's got a fair drop that it can do. Others I've already said previously is, you know, again in this larger zone, but barely getting any sort of bounce. I really wanted at least some sort of a retracement off here, like even if it was just similar to this. But yeah, really not giving very much at all, and now drifting off again. New weekly supply, potentially breaking this log trend line. The linear is a bit lower, or a lot lower. In fact, the linear will line up quite nicely with that lower cross. But total 3 is the one that's kind of making me a bit more nervous, and that'll be if, you know, if the majors start to fall down, because the majors obviously have been stronger than a lot more of the alts. What do I think of AI trading? What do you mean by AI trading? So I've looked at some of the new AI bots that have been coming out as part of you know, the Solana sort of meme coin / AI thing, and I found them pretty crap. or they still seem to only be as good as what you put in it. They're not necessarily crap. That's too strong, but it seemed to me, I don't know enough about them. I don't know how they are developed. But you know, it would be the equivalent, like if I created a bot, then it's going to be all supply and demand. So, you know, the bot's going to be spitting out, well, it's coming into this demand, etc. So that's what I found with those bots, is that they're just spitting out, well, the RSI is oversold and there's divergence and the volume's increasing and this. So to me, it wasn't really AI. It was people who are too lazy to learn what, you know, the indicators actually do themselves. I mean, maybe you can use it. I do know somebody who used it to learn, so actually I think probably it's useful from that perspective. But, you know, all they were doing was kind of going, you know, looking at a chart like this, going, well, you know, 802 is resistance, this is support. I also found, like, one of the ones I was looking at, it kept somehow having stop losses where I would enter. So, and I don't know what, again, like, so I wasn't sure, like, where it was coming from. Is it somebody just, like, saying this is how it tells? I guess somebody still has to teach the bot what support and resistance is, and therefore it's only as good as that person. So, you know, from my perspective, I think I'm awesome, obviously. Objectively awesome, like I'm not always right, but I would love my strategy to be programmed. I'm like, if somebody did say to me a while ago they wanted to machine learn me, but then they're always too busy and never seem to get it done. I did actually ask somebody else who said yes, he does do machine learning. So I need to follow up with that. But yeah, like, and I think the person who I was originally asking said to me, I needed to be able to, in words, specifically define what supply and demand are, which I can do to a point, but obviously there is always some subjectiveness, and there's a lot of, so like, and I say, like in my first video on this subject, I was kind of like, you know, this is how you draw them. Like, anyone can draw them. It really isn't rocket science. However, knowing which ones you want to trade is where the art comes in. But I still mostly stand by what I say, that if you just trade the high time frame ones, and you do that blindly with your stop on the other side, or even 4 hours, then with your stop on the other side of the zone, then you're probably going to have a decent win rate. Yeah, I don't like, yeah, so I know people have tried to do this on TradingView. I just don't know enough about it, because I don't know how you do it, so I appreciate the offer with the coding. But, like, yeah, I guess I need somebody to kind of tell me, because so the supply and demand indicators that you get on TradingView that I've seen, like I have one friend who watches it, who uses one, but firstly the ones I have seen only seem to do the time frame you're on, which obviously, as you can see from my charts, is useless to me. I need all of the time frames, or at least, you know, to be able to select which time frames I want. But to have only daily supply or only daily demand and ignore everything else is never going to work. So it would need to be a proper thing, and I just don't know how you, and all the ones I've seen, like I say, are the ones the people who are trying to do it in TradingView and make it into an indicator. yeah, and then also the other challenge for actually trading it is, okay, so let's say we were trading this chart. So if we went, okay, the alert's going to go, so my alerts always go slightly before. So if the alert went at 6:50, and then you can tell the bot to enter, you know, on the, you know, you can say, oh, okay, it's got a weekly demand, enter on weekly demand, but then it's kind of like, where do you put your stop loss? So on the other side of weekly demand would be appropriate. But then, like I say, there's nuance. So if in this situation you went, let me find the tool, if you entered there, oh no, wrong tool, sorry. If you entered there, if this was a legit trade you were doing, you wouldn't really want to have your stop underneath triple bottom here. So in the, you know, so it's got that nuance. So maybe you put it a bit lower, or, you know, depending on how you wanted to trade, when you put it down here. And like my friend who was asking me was going, oh, but could you have a set percent? What percent of each time frame would you wait on to get your trade on that time frame? What do you mean, what percent? I wait for candle closes, if that's what you mean. It's easy to accommodate multiple time frames. I tried it on TradingView. It's more, yeah, I mean, so I think to do an indicator that does this, then great, that would be wonderful, because then I wouldn't have to do anything, but I still have to set the alerts manually, which is really annoying. So that would be the big thing for me, is to be able to have at least automated alerts. So, you know, on your TradingView indicator, you trade, you know, that it puts the weekly in for you and sets an alert just before it gets to the weekly, because that's basically what I'm doing manually at the moment. And then, like I say, the new level of it is kind of like, how do you actually trade each alert? What do you wait for? And again, like my second video that I did on supply and demand, like, could have given a whole heap of ideas on that. So you can, you know, you can use moving averages, you can use supply and demand on the lower time frames, you can use RSI, divergence, volume, like whatever you like, patterns. But yeah, I wish I had the knowledge to kind of play around with the bot myself to teach it how to do things. Trade with the trend confirmations. Yeah, the hard part is defining exactly what supply and demand is in coding terms. Have you watched my first video? To be honest, I did that a long time ago. I hope it's still decent. Yeah, I mean, it is like, it's easy if it's like a single candle. So, you know, you can go the monthly. I think then this was what my friend's issue was, that I was struggling to kind of specifically define, because there are, you know, like, so in this case, so let's look at the monthly, you know, you've got a monthly candle, up candle, and then a red candle afterwards, closed below. You know, you could just do only strong ones rather than strong and weak, but you can say it closes below the low of the green candle, and then that, therefore that is supply. But then in this case, you've got two, I would still call this supply, you've got two green up candles, and then the red candle closes, in this case it hasn't closed below the low. Or then arguably then you could say it confirms when this one does for a strong supply, but it's two candles. Then you've got other situations like this, you know, from a demand perspective, then when it's green, red, green, red, green. And then for me, I like draw the whole thing. So, but this is where I differ to people like ICT. So the ICT method is the last up candle before the drop, or the last down candle before a rise. So he would say, like, for him, this is supply, or an order block, whereas for me, that is not one. This is 1, 2 candles on this time frame. But also then that may disappear, like if you looked at the 2-month supply. But, you know, and then you can see in this instance, you know, my way works potentially better, because I've done it from this, the bottom of this candle, and these candles come up into there to test and then drop. Whereas if you'd done it from this candle, then you wouldn't have got the trade. But then also arguably, you know, maybe, yeah, give it a try and let me know, please do. But then arguably this, you know, this last up candle, you know, okay, it's, well, I mean, actually wouldn't have worked over here either when it's come back to that zone. Yeah, I mean, arguably, at least like with this, you could say again that you won't trade it if it doesn't get there. So if you can get the bot or whatever to draw it as I define it, then obviously you get this trade, but you've got a wide stop on it. If you used it the way ICT defined it, let's say, and it doesn't come and test that zone, then yes, you miss the trade. But if it does test that zone, you get a much higher risk to reward than on my version. In this particular example, in other examples, it might be different. But I never liked the logic of the way people draw order blocks, so I made my own logic. And then I do try and stick to that. So, you know, that's why I say when we were talking about the indices and things like that, it's like I want, you know, I need to see monthly demands break, and the problem, you know, if I'm going to then say it's broken, but the problem is, you know, you get zones like this when you are looking at those high time frames and they're massive. So, you know, is this going to bounce off the top here? It becomes challenging whether you want to short this right now, thinking it's going to go deeper in the zone, or if it's suddenly going to bounce up here. I use 2 candle and class them as trend for each time frame. 2 candles and class them as trend. So, oh, what, to draw your zones, you mean? And then you're saying trend. So you would use 2 candles like this. And then that's obviously a trend. And then if it comes back here, great. I think the difficulty is that there's 2 parts of this, but at least for me anyway, is that there's an analysis and then there's what you'd actually trade. So people are always asking me, you know, where's Bitcoin going? What's this going to do? What's that going to do? So there's part of me that's going, so I look at this chart and I'm like, you know, where is this going? I would like it to go down here. It doesn't mean it has to, but I might say to myself, I'm not trading this unless it goes down here, but that doesn't mean it's going to go down here. And I've had many people freak out about that in the past at me, because I'll say, you know, like, let's say this is Bitcoin and this was 20k or whatever, and I'll have a cross there, and people are like, oh, you're so bearish. And I'm saying, well, no, I'm not bearish. I don't necessarily think it's going to go there. Like at this point, for example, on this chart, now it looks like it is. If it creates a weekly supply, I'll have a higher confidence that it will go there. But all I'm saying is if it goes there, then I will trade it. But it doesn't have to go there. But yeah, that's why the difference between the analysis and the actual trading. But people always want more of the analysis from me. They want to know, like, you know, is it going there? Which is not really the point of supply and demand from my perspective anyway. The point is all you're saying is there's a zone where you expect a reaction. Anyway, sorry, a lot of yelling from outside. Yeah, so that's total 3. Others, like I said, already had the weekly rejection. We closed a very tiny weekly supply last week and has already rejected off it. This one also makes me nervous because obviously that's got a significant drop if it does want to break down this zone. Total DeFi is much the same. It's got, I think, no, I was thinking of dominance. No, again, this is, again, looking ropey. It's going to create a weekly supply. Decent sized drop if it wants to go down to that weekly or into this 3-month zone. BTC dominance is still strong. But this is kind of more the crucial one for me. Like, is this gonna... So it's interesting because, I mean, I guess what we're really saying, okay, so Litecoin's now coming down to demand, that's good. Is BTC is obviously still remaining relatively strong, and it's really the alt market, the majors, Ether, etc., that are getting crucified. So we've got BTC dominance going up and US dollar dominance going up, which is making it slightly awkward to analyze. But that's always why I prefer US dollar dominance to all the other dominances. But yeah, anyway, like if this gets up into this 6-month level again, and or even this monthly level just a little bit below, we just need to see what the reaction is. But it's so far, again, still holding structure. So, you know, again, we wanted the rejection off here, which we got, but it still held clean bounce off 2-month demand before another move up. Ether dominance is just horrible, but again, it is in a zone, again, that we pray is going to give a bounce. So it's on the 2-month demand, so maybe Ether's going to finally pick up, who knows, or it's going to go to 0. But, you know, we keep saying, oh, Ether's going to get a bounce, Ether's going to get a bounce, Ether's going to get a bounce, and so far it's just not at all. So I guess we just have to see. And as I've said before, like others' dominance and total DeFi dominance are just not good right now. I'm not confident of these at all. So all of these just support my bias to short alts for the most part, or to short retests on alts. So if any bounce on an alt that's of decent size comes into a supply, short it. It's the highest probability trade. Do I love swing trading or day trade? Day trading, I have not got the patience to swing trade. But what I do trade, even with these large zones, I'm looking for just a scalp off the zone. That's how I trade. I'm looking for that immediate reaction because I have not got the patience to wait. So you look here, for example, let's say we were trading this chart, it's dropped down. I would look for this potential short continuation, and it's had 6 weeks of sideways before we're finally getting a candle that's going to close down what looks like it today. I don't have the patience to wait 6 weeks of sideways. Ben Cameron has the best analysis on Ether. You asked me that the other day, didn't you? I was supposed to watch him this weekend to see. I will watch it. The other person I wanted to watch, I don't know if you ever follow Credible Crypto, who I'm hit and miss on. Like, I really like some of his stuff, and and then I have my reservations about others of it, but not in any critical way to him. We've all got our own analysis and the way we review charts. So if his works for him, that's fine. He's got a big following. He's very rational. And he's done a video last week on Ether, so I quite want to watch what his opinion is. Yeah, I'll show you Ether in a minute. And you, like, if anyone who's followed me for any period of time knows what my projection on Ether was months ago. So yeah, and I'm sad to say it is playing out at the moment. Whether it's going to play out to the extent that I have, I don't know. Do I have a trading room? No, I have a private group on Telegram, but that's where my alt alerts, so all the zones that I have going off go in there, and then I give analysis and stuff like that, but it's not a trading room per se. I don't live trade with people. Something I might do in future, and I do want to start copy trading in the very near future. But I don't know, like it kind of makes me feel like when I did my driving test, like my lessons were all fine. I was driving no problem. Soon as I got in the car for the driving test, my whole body started to shake. And this was when I was like 30, so it's not when I was 18. I did my driving test very late because I'm from London. So I only did it when I got to Australia, and you actually need a car. But my entire body started to shake, and then I pulled away from the curb twice in neutral, which luckily didn't fail me because that doesn't kill you. But I couldn't figure out why the car wasn't moving, and then the instructor said, the examiner said to me, why, you need to put the car in gear, and I'm like, oops. But yeah, thankfully I didn't fail. But I had this, I just don't operate well under stress. And even as a kid, like I was great, I was awesome at pool, but as soon as I went into a pool competition, I would kind of freak out, and then I would suddenly get shit because I get in my own head. So that kind of makes me a little bit concerned about live trading. Anyway, yeah, feel free to, you can join, come and join my Telegram group anyway, and you can show me in there, like, can you show me like in words or and pictures, or does it have to be like in a video format? I suppose we can somehow probably set that up in Telegram. Okay, he's been bearish on it a while, and he was correct. Now he's starting to turn, but he's waiting the Fed to pivot for confirmation. But it's in his entry zone, which is a mathematical curve. Okay, interesting. I will check that out. It is in 3-month demand, so it's the competing analysis, isn't it? You've probably seen my the patterns I've drawn. And that sort of a historical play out and the double top, and it's the same on all these charts. Not the dominance, but the market cap ones, the double top play out. So I guess you've probably seen that, Aussie man. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm really not liking the look of others' dominance here either, because I think that obviously if it falls here, it can fall off a cliff. So I think just generally be very careful on these, because I think the things aren't for me really looking good. So in response to your earlier question, do I think that Bitcoin's going to follow indices? Yes, I do think that probably, but I don't necessarily think it's because of indices. I think it's got its own difficulties on the chart. And then on top of that, so from an ETF perspective, we had some more minor selling going on Thursday and Friday, but there's nothing in there that makes me think, okay, we're gonna their ETFs are secretly buying and holding the price up. And then, as I've talked about previously on Coinbase, we've got walls running. Actually, they've come up higher now, so running from now all the way down to 70k. The heavier ones were around at 76 and 75, but maybe that's just because it's a 5k mark. Bitcoin, the Binance chart is similar. 75k is the bigger wall, or 78, 75, and again just stack walls below, but I kind of do expect those to fill out. Lower time frame, let me just light a cigarette. Lower time frame, the Bybit chart was looking a bit more ropey, liquidation heat map than the Binance one, but 81, 82k, and then there's a chunk of walls at 81.5. So locally we've got a lot of liquidations below, but also a lot mounting up above. Binance was 81,800 earlier, but less to the downside than Bybit. Yeah, actually, so it's taken it out now as well. So at 81,800 or 81,700 was where the wall was on the liquidations were on Binance. It's actually taken those out now. What else on the data? I don't want to go through all the data because the weekend data is kind of irrelevant anyway. Is it wise to rely on the order books since they can be changed at any time? It depends what you mean rely. Yes, they can be changed at any time, so unless you have access to them, then I wouldn't rely on them. But yeah, well, but what you tend to see is walls do get taken out. So I wouldn't. So for me, like I wouldn't. What you might get is an initial bounce just above a wall, so you can scalp off that. But yes, you do need to have access to them so you know that the wall is still there, like rather than kind of going, oh, Elisa said there's a wall there, and then trying to trade off that 80k wall tomorrow. That wouldn't be wise. You need to have access to this yourself to check it is still there. But quite often what you'll get is a bounce just above, and then it will kind of wick through the wall, and then you'll see the reversal. So that's kind of what you should be watching for. Excuse me. Yeah, that's kind of what you should be watching for. But no, I mean, it's not, for me, it's just a little bit of extra data, and it would need to support, it's only in the context of it supports where I have it. So if I have, for example, if I have a giant demand that ran from 82k to 70k, like if it was a monthly or something, then I would look at the walls inside to kind of try and pick a zone that it would bounce on. Similarly with all these other things that I have on my crazy busy charts, so the red lines are the point of controls. You know, I don't think they're hugely accurate because it's BitMEX, so it's obviously not a high volume exchange anymore. I've been charting on this for so long, I just don't change it. And I also still find BitMEX one of the more reliable ones for where the zones are. But for example, you can see here, the naked point of control. So I'm looking at confluence. So when I'm giving the entries that I want to give, like I'm always looking at confluence. So for example, this entry here, it's a 30-minute zone that's not tested. This is not a high probability zone anymore for me, but it is a 30-minute zone that hasn't been tested. There's a CME gap. There's a naked point of control. The walls in this case are a little bit lower, 80k, although that now has been a new one put in at 81. Then I'd look at where the liquidations are. You haven't looked into them for that reason, just asking if they've been helpful. Yes, I do. I just find all of it helpful, and particularly for a scalper. I think if you're trading higher time frame, it doesn't really matter, because you can still just trade a high time frame supply and demand zone with a wide stop. But I think if you were looking like to trade, for example, this 30-minute level, like really you would have wanted this to hit like back here in mid-March. But if you were trading this 30-minute level, to know that there's other confluence of other stuff there, is there a fib there, all that sort of stuff, I think that's useful. Heat maps the same, yes, William, the exact same reason that, yeah, if you're looking at trading, so the long on that 30-minute is 8,500, so I would kind of go, okay, well that's my alert. I mean, the alert's actually already gone, but that's the alert. Then I would kind of go, okay, there's probably stops under this low, 79,800. There's walls at 80k, which I would expect to get taken out. Where are the liquidations? Like all of that to then can help you position where your stop is and whether you think that's a good zone. So that's kind of all the important stuff. So yeah, anyway, like I said, on the lower time frame on this, that I kind of wanted Bitcoin to hit this level at the same time Ether hit the 3-week zone. So obviously Bitcoin's still off that now because we've kind of detached a little bit over the weekend. They were looking closer last week, but obviously Ether's come down more heavily. So Ether, this was a 3-week zone, which is why it's an orange arrow for a high time frame zone. But obviously there was a risk, and my issue with this was that it could come significantly deeper inside, which is why I wanted the confluence. And then on the case of Bitcoin, this wasn't a high probability level, hence why I wanted Ether to hit at the same time to support the Bitcoin entry as well. So we're not getting that at all now because it's gone completely off at the weekend. On the case of Ether, we had the CME close here. We've got the CME 3-week as lower, which I've commented in the last video as well, 1690. But my preference on Ether was in fact 1600. It's where this daily zone is, and the 61 fib at the bottom, or a lot further down in this 3-week. Do you have or know a guide that helps navigate these for scalping? My scalping game is a bit weak. I don't think there is a guide. Matt just followed. Hi, Matt. I don't think there is a guide. I mean, there are lots of people who've done guides on stuff, but I I don't know if I've seen a specific one that I can recommend. I'll think about it. I'll try and think. I have seen some in the past, but I haven't really used them myself, so it's hard to. A lot of people do order book analysis, but yeah, whether there's an actual course, I'm not sure. Some people do it a lot more than I do. A lot of people are using EXO. I'm a bit scared if I try and load EXO, it's just not going to load, or it will take a long time. But a lot of people use EXO charts and the footprint charts and things like that. To me, it's overkill, and I don't know enough about it, so I couldn't talk you through that myself. But I look at more like the things so people are using this and the footprint. You get these footprint charts that give you a huge amount of information, but it depends. Like I think this is really if you're trading very low time frame. And for me, I have looked into this stuff to this extent, but not for a couple of years, which is why I don't really remember it terribly well. But I haven't seen enough value in it personally. And I think a lot of the part of that is like when you asked me the other day about volume. It's like there are so many exchanges, and like I know one person like really heavily uses Bybit, but like not many people are using Bybit futures anymore. Like most people I know are using. I haven't looked again for a while at CoinMarketCap to see like what is the most heavily traded futures, but he was obsessed with using Bybit. But yet Binance was much bigger. And then now, is anybody using Bybit because it became KYC? So has everybody moved off now onto MEXC and onto Blowfin and those sorts of things? But again, so I skim through these and I'll look at, what the net longs and net shorts are, people. So I use it more, again, generically kind of going, okay, we're dropping. Is that because people are getting stopped out of longs, or is it because people are actually shorting? So what is driving this down move? But I don't think you really need to know that, quite frankly, but it would help you for scalping. There are bits of these data, but I would start with just the free stuff first and then see if you want to go into it. So start with using Coinalyze. Again, I haven't loaded this pre-stream, so I don't know how quickly it will load. Coinalyze, I made my own little dashboard. I have Coinbase loaded on this because this I'm more, I know it's not, I'm not logged in. I more wanted to see Coinbase, like the ETFs buying. So I have CBDs on this. You've seen me use this before, I think, Aussie man. But it doesn't give you the net longs and shorts, but you'll get those on EXO, but then EXO you have to pay for. And the same with Trading Light, you have to pay for, I think it's like $15 a month, which gives you the walls. But yeah, I would start with the free stuff. So Tensor Charts, assuming it's still working, because that's hit and miss these days. Tensor Charts and Coinalyze I would start with, and then just start. And then if you want to go deeper into the data, then you can start thinking about paying for it. It helps you in things like situations like New York as well. So when New York's having fuckery, that really is when you can then look at the low time frame data and kind of go, the price is moving up. Is that just people pushing it up in New York because they're going to dump on them later, or is that legitimately people spot buying? I'm also not logged into this either, and it looks like it doesn't want to load. But Tensor Charts is the other option for getting, for getting free data on the walls. But again, you have to set up the, ask me at another point if you want, but you have to set up the criteria yourself down the bottom here on how you want to view the heat maps. But yeah, a lot of people used to use this back in the day, but I don't hear anybody using it these days. Ether, obviously, is the uglier one now, so I'm getting a lot of alerts coming in now, so I guess we're having more of a dump while I'm doing the stream. ETHBTC, obviously continually dropping, same as like Ether dominance that we looked at before. ETHBTC, really, I just want, no worries, I want down in this 2-month demand now as well, because it's just, but is it going to actually hold that? I don't know. It's coming off a lower high, so really it should take out this low. So it's very possible now, given it's giving no bounce whatsoever, that it's going to come all the way down to here. But at least it's coming into the last hurrah level for this last up move, and then you would again hope for some sort of retracement, but nobody seems to like Ether anymore. Similarly on to Bitcoin and what I said earlier, like these Ether is, it had a weekly supply that I talked about last week that it's rejected off there. Sadly, didn't get to my actual entry that I wanted. It was slightly higher. But again, still holding its downtrend. Local downtrend is going to create a new 2-day in here today. In its favor, it's got some CME gaps a bit above. let's close this one from back here finally. But yeah, so as I've said, my preference was always 1600 on this. And yeah, so for anybody who hasn't followed me since previously, let me just find so on Ether, my major concern, and on the lot of market cap charts that are all basically the same. Probably not going to get to the alts today. Stream's been too long already. I was very concerned about this double top, and then there was this other double top inside the bigger double top. So when we did the second double top here, or when we appeared to be rejecting, having swing failed the high back in December, I commented that there was this structure. So what I observed that we had, let me hide that again quickly, that we had this structure in here. I was observing that this is weak demand, that it got a bounce, retest, and then dropped through it. That smaller structure I then likened to this bigger structure, weak demand, unable to break the high. I was hoping for more of a retest here, but we didn't get that equivalent retest, so it actually just got it wicked down into it, a couple of candles up and then dropped low. But again, that was so overlaying that smaller one on this section, obviously I was then saying that this demand was weak, and then I expected to go through it. And that's kind of what we've happened, and we haven't got this second retracement. We now just keep going down. The other then issue in the bigger picture is we have that exactly the same structure here. So again, are we going to drop down to the start of this low, get some retracement, and then get that much bigger drop? Do I see a scenario that Ether stop hunts 2022 low? Let me have a look where 2022 low is. Yes, so that's the scenario I just said. And more than a stop hunt. But yeah, I mean, like you can see the fractal. It's not a difficult fractal to see. It's just a double top, really. But you know, what you're then looking at is you're going, okay, so yeah, as I just said, you've got move up, backs test demand, another move up, unable to break supply. Comes back down here, retest this demand, but it's weak demand because it's been unable to break supply. In this case, gives a little bounce, but then drops through it. And it's exactly the same here. You've got to move up, makes a demand here, comes back and tests it, unable to make a new high, weak demand. In this case, you know, got a wick all the way to the bottom of it. Did give a small retracement, but not as much as here. I was hoping for a 61 retracement up into here, but didn't. Only gave like a small. It was a 61 actually, but I think only from the last drop, and then has dropped lower. So that's, just get rid of all that. And then it is exactly the same scenario in the bigger picture here. That we've got this significant up move, it's come back, it's made a demand here, tested the demand, gone up, unable to make a new high, weak demand, so it comes back, tests here. So we would hope, you know, we're still hoping for that bounce somewhere from now down into this zone down here, that we at least get that bounce. Again, how much of a bounce? Is it going to be like a 61 like that? Is it going to be a smaller version like this? Or, you know, even a bigger version, but we get that bounce off the retest here, but then ultimately breaks demand. So that's always been my like super bearish scenario on Ether. But yeah, that is the scenario that doesn't stop hunt the 2022 low, it breaks the 2022 low and comes all the way back down to $500. You know, and that is the bigger picture double top, and that is what we expect. You know, like if the double top, like by Bulkowski's traditional, you know, that it does the same distance again, so that distance then gets repeated to the downside. So yeah, be afraid, be very afraid, but trade zones as and when they are hit and rejected. But at the moment, you know, like I keep hoping we're going to get a bounce off this, but you know, it really isn't giving much. You know, you do, like I looked back at a lot of, there was a similar pattern here actually. This was the same, gave a little bit more of an up move, but again, this was made a demand, you know, went up, made a demand, came back, tested it, did break the high in this case, but only by a small amount, not a significant break of the high. So then when it came back to this zone, in fact a bit higher in this case, got the bounce, but then went straight through it. So again, it's that, you know, and it's still also an inverse head and shoulders, double top, whatever you want to call it. But Ether does like these patterns. But what I did go back and measure was, you know, the retracement. So in this case, the retracement was to the 61 to 70 fib. In this case, the retracement was to the 61 fib there. So that's kind of what I was hoping for here, that we were going to get a retracement, you know, once we'd had this first drop, that we would get a retracement up to that cross. That's why I wanted those entries up there, but we just didn't get a decent retracement. But like I say, we did get that on the lower time frame. I think if you fib from this high to this low, that very neatly rejected the 61 fib in there. Anyway, yeah, that's been my bearish thesis on this, but it all doesn't, you know, you would still hope that you get a some sort of a retracement. Elisa, do I love the golden spot fib or ignore it, or if it comes into confluence? Yeah, it's confluence, and it depends on the pair. So Bitcoin, I think, really doesn't care about the 61. Bitcoin's like at the 78, sometimes the 88. Bitcoin likes deep retracements in both directions. Ether, like I say, as I just demonstrated, Ether does really like the 61. But I always do it in confluence of something else. Well, not always, but most of the time I try to do it in confluence of something else. I think that but even this one actually, so I was wary of this short entry, but I said, you know, because we had these previous double bottom here, and Ether also, more than anything else, likes, it supports support and resistance. It works more in support and resistance than Bitcoin does. Bitcoin is better with supply and demand. Ether will do support and resistance and supply and demand. So it's always worth watching Ether. So obviously I had these, you know, these equal lows here, and then, you know, what was the bottom of this consolidation that got broken down over this side, so that demand that then fails. So that's why I looked for that more aggressive entry here on Ether, and I believe that was the 61 fib. Let me just check. Nope. Is it the linear? No. Oh, maybe it was from the last breakdown. Hold on. Over there. Yeah, so if you, just from that last bit of the breakdown, this was also the 61 fib. So yeah, it's always looking for that confluence. 61.8 is more useful in equities and FX. Yes. But even equities, well, I don't know about equities or versus indices. The indices, like I did look at that, was one of the things I was looking at when I looked at all of the history on those earlier. And yeah, it was the 50 or the 61 kind of hit and miss. But again, like I just find like in those in isolation, I can't use fibs in isolation, but if they do come inside, so the more things that come inside, the better. So that's why I said with the order books, with the liquidation heat maps, with, you know, for me, it's supply and demand is always number one. But then if things are in confluence with support and resistance, like points of breakdown, like I've just said on Ether, order book stuff, walls, liquidations, and then if you want to add in divergences and all those sorts of things, like all those things will help you. The more you put in, the better, you know, and I laugh when people say, like people get praised, I've seen on Twitter for having clean charts, and people laugh at me for my charts, and that's fine, people can laugh, I don't really care, so long as they work for me, that's what counts. I think it's funny when people say, congratulations on your clean chart. Like if people can trade off it, that's entirely up to them, I've got no problem with that at all. But to me, like I would much rather see a chart with a lot more on it, because I think that means the person's thinking deeply about it and doing a lot of analysis. Ultimately, you probably want to pare it back. So, you know, so mine essentially is heavily pared back on the higher time frame, like even though it doesn't look like it. My lower time frame is a lot more aggressive, you know, and I would put in, you know, VWAPs and things like. I've got a lot more of the indicators here that are hidden, but I don't use them that much. But, you know, I've got this levels NLA, which unfortunately isn't public anymore. It was always private, and I got it kind of secretly. But that gives me these, just hide everything, these previous month open, previous day high, previous day open, which I know other people love. But again, I don't use those a lot. But I think it's nice to know, you know, have we just taken out the previous week low or the daily low and all those sorts of things. But it's really up to you. But yeah, if you want clean charts and that works for you, that's fine. I like more analysis, more information, like I'm analytical, so for me the more information the better. Okay, we're really getting a bit of a dive on Ether now. So I did say earlier, so on the majors, again I won't go into a massive amount of detail about these just if you are trading them, keep an eye on them, because most of them I've drawn the new 2-day supplies are most of them are likely to create 2-day supply, except for EOS and Atom, which are obviously the outliers. But They're going to create 2-day supplies. A couple of them are going to create a new weekly. I think NEAR and one of the others, can't remember which one, maybe Sol. Most of them are going to create a 2-day, which, like I say, I've already got drawn in, but I'll delete if necessary later. And obviously, as you know, like I've wanted lower on most of these, with the exception of EOS. Well, EOS actually now want lower, but the exception of Atom, which I think still could go up. So I think today we've just had obviously this Litecoin alert hit. The confluence isn't there, so I wouldn't really be taking longs at the moment. This was just because this was the first on Litecoin, the first 3-day zone inside the bigger 2-month. But it obviously, I've said previously that I think these are going to get taken out. But again, you just kind of want you're looking for, are we going to get an initial bounce? I think a middle ground is good, not too clean, not too complicated. Yeah, it's finding a system that works and whatever works for you. I think my concern about the clean chart brigade is because I don't know if you guys are on Twitter as much, or X I should call it now, I'm too old school. They all have the same, like all their charts are identical, and there's actually 2 guys I follow, I swear are the same person, their charts are so similar. And I think once you start getting like that and you follow, everybody's following this same pattern, everybody's looking at liquidity, everybody's looking at, you know, wave high, wave low, range. The mid-range I find utterly bizarre, like the 50%, everybody has that. And I think the 50% is completely arbitrary, pointless. Like, why should something retrace 50%? I mean, I don't know, maybe if people trade it, that's the case, but then people don't, because we talk about the 61 and the golden fib zone, and that's been around for years. But yeah, my concern, I think, with the people who do have very little on their charts is they're all trading exactly the same thing. And I don't know, again, if you've followed me for long enough, one thing I've started to notice recently, and I've now started to trade quite heavily, which so far nobody else has cottoned on to, is the stop hunt for the stop hunt. So everybody wants to trade liquidity, everybody trading a swing failure. What you're now seeing on a fairly regular basis is swing failures of swing failures. So that, and it's, again, there's nothing new really either. It's triple hit to the low or triple hit to the high. But be careful of that, because that's becoming increasingly common, I think, because everybody's trading every swing failure, or every possible swing point. They're like, oh, is it going to be a swing failure? Even your question, Aussie Man, earlier, you know, do I think Ether's going to stop hunt the 2022 low? Like, yeah, it might stop hunt it, you might be right, but also structurally, I would expect, if it goes to the 2022 low, I would expect it to be lower, not to stop hunt. But even that, it's that kind of getting into like how everybody else is trading, and then once it becomes like that, then it stops working. And I've seen that even in like the 8 years or so that I've been doing this. Like when I first started, people were starting to trade ICT in crypto, but not many people. Then suddenly everybody was trading ICT. And then everybody moved to smart money concepts, which is sort of ICT simplified / on crack. It sort of simplifies what ICT does, but it also adds some stuff. And that's why everybody's charts look the same. But also, like I say, I'm now starting to see that not work anymore. I think FX is less of an issue. I think you can stick with the same strategies in FX. But because these people are blindly, many of them, not all, like some I do value, but a lot of people are blindly trading without really thinking about why price is bouncing where it is or why it's doing what it's doing. They're just like, oh, it's a swing high, let's look for a swing failure. Oh, it's a swing low, let's look for a swing failure. But not really thinking about why it might bounce there or what's going on in the rest of the market. Things will start to fail. But anyway, yeah, just be conscious of that. On the lower time frame swing failures, we are increasingly getting swing failures or swing failures. Anyway, back to Litecoin. So this was a 3-day, it was the first zone inside this 2-month. But yeah, I've always said that I was slightly wary of the fact that at some point I think it's going to take these stops. But again, we also, like, the reason I look at the majors is not necessarily to trade them, but for the confluence perspective. So obviously we've got this now finally getting into a zone of interest. BCH is and has always been very messy. Like, it's been in a zone of interest this 6-month for ages, but has all these stops below that make me nervous. But also it had a monthly inside the 6 months, which has been my next alert, which you can see it's still miles off. That's got a 4-day supply above. So all of these, again, as I've said previously, not all, a lot of them have 3-month supply, and I've alerted the 3-month levels, most of which haven't been hit, but they are large zones. But yeah, there's nothing new on that. Okay, Bitcoin's finally getting to my 30-minute level. Ripple is scary because if Ripple doesn't hold this range, it does have an annual level here, which it's really clinging on. If I see any sort of like possibly even a daily close, but certainly a 3-day or weekly close below this level, and I'm going to be shorting this to 0. Not to 0, that's too strong, but to 0.83. But this is obviously still holding the range, but not looking that promising right now. But yeah, I don't think there's anything really new on these. I just wanted to point out that they're going to create 2-day supplies, so I might start to get more aggressive. EOS finally did reject fall through a week 12-hour demand and made a 12-hour supply. So I had put an alert in here for the possibility of a short. It hasn't quite hit that level. There's a 4-hour in there, so hopefully it won't this won't come off too early. But yeah, watch around here for a possible short on EOS. And then also there is the concern is when you've got a bit of this chop, there is an untested 4-hour and 2-hour up here. So I have 2 alerts on this for possible scalps. It also has made a 4-hour demand. So this immediate one may not be overly high probability now, particularly if Bitcoin's falling and this is not falling. Sorry, what are you saying, William? You also go with the market maker. So yeah, the market maker, I dispute all of that stuff as well. Market makers are there to provide liquidity, not to move the price. Yeah, so I don't generally agree with any of the arguments on or statements are market makers doing this, that, and the other. Like, I think the market maker does do things low time frame. The market maker is there to provide liquidity on both sides, and it is not in the market maker's interests for the most part to move the price, because if the price does move too fast, then the market maker gets trapped, which is why you then use the theory that when it comes back to that, you're trading 13 years now and you've seen the markets move oh so much in the last 2 years. Yeah, moving a lot more. But yeah, a lot of people go, oh, the market maker's like, pump the price, and I'm like, well, no, because the market maker, if they are doing that, then they've trapped themselves because they provided liquidity for shorts at other levels. God, I'm having so many alerts hit now. I'm definitely going to have to do another stream tomorrow on these alerts, I think. Let me just quickly do the rest of the majors. So, okay, so BNB is now breaking down this 12-hour zone. It's going to make a 2-day above. This was a tentative long in here. Like, BNB is still bullish, so I'm still somewhat bullish on these, on BNB, Link, and ADA, and BCH, because they have 6-month annual demands and things like that. But obviously we still need to see those higher lows and then the higher highs. So BNB is coming into a 12-hour here. Link, I had an alert hit earlier for this retest of this monthly level. So do keep an eye on Link. I think it's got a 5-day, that pink, a little bit lower, 5-day inside, and obviously it's a monthly zone. It can go much deeper if it wants, but we want to, if you do see a swing fail on Link, I think that's worth considering. Just again, be conscious, it's going to make the same 2-day supply as everything else by the looks of it, or is it a daily supply? 2-day supply in there, and I think that's a possible weekly. I don't have the weekly. Yeah, so it might get hung up on some of the supply that it's got immediately above price. It might give you some time, but yeah, Link is one to watch. ADA, again, like, while I'm bullish on it, there isn't really anywhere I want to long, so we already had the retest of the 6-month level that I've talked about before, but it's obviously retracing out that whole thing. And Dogecoin, actually, yes, I'm also bullish on that because it's on an annual demand, but obviously annual demand, it can go a lot deeper inside. So Doge, again, if it comes down into this 2-month, I'd be more confident of looking for longs there. But again, like, again, these zones are massive. How much of it is going to retrace? And, we still are running the much bigger risk that this is, similar to that ether structure. This is a double top, lower high. Again, if nobody's following me previously, my concern on a lot of these alts, and what we are seeing on many alts, but the majors have been stronger, is that we had an impulse and a correction, but this could still be a correction for a C wave to take us back down. And in many cases, like Doge, for example, it's got demands down here that haven't been tested. But what we're looking for is for it not to be a zigzag C wave, but it to be an A, B. Oh, I don't know what happened there. Hold on, get my brush. Yeah, A, B, and C being a triangle correction for the up move. So that's why we're looking for longs in here. But there is a possibility it's going to be a C wave lower. Nobody heard of market maker until ICT became viable, and now everybody thinks they understand the market maker. But even ICT doesn't talk about market maker in that way, does he? He doesn't talk about market makers moving the price. I think that's how other people have taken his information and then bastardized it into something that's incorrect. But even if you Google market maker, it says somebody who provides liquidity. So, you know, there are whales, there are institutions, there are all sorts of people who move the price and all sorts of price action. And I think market makers low time frame, sure, you know, I think if they're getting trapped, you know, in New York fuckery and things like that, you see the retracements, but they contribute then to the price continuing in the direction that it's already started in, because they're then getting out a break even of the trades that have been trapped. It was like, there was one called the square up candle, I think I learned very early on, which then became an ICT, you know, sort of market maker, break, retest, breaker. But the square up candle, it's when you've had that strong move away from a zone, and then they say squares it up, like it comes back to allow the market makers to get out. So I don't know, maybe you could argue that that's the market maker moving the price back so they could get out, but I mean, but the actual instigation of a price breakout isn't a market maker, from my perspective anyway. But hey, if someone wants to dispute me, feel free. So yeah, anyway, Doge obviously can still go lower, but I want to be bullish on this. But it's not ready yet. You know, so I tried it, and again, if you didn't see my previous streams, I tried for the higher lows on these because they had 3 5-day demands, but in all cases have just come back through them. Said they were high risk because it's that first possible higher low. Until you see the higher low, then it's not a higher low. And they'd all come off like major supply as well, or weekly supplies and things like that. So yeah, be wary of these because they're going to create those weekly and 2-day supplies, but there are some possible longs that we're coming up to. DOT and NEAR, I've again previously said, sorry, isn't accumulation, manipulation, expansion, sorry, I was missing messages. Oh, I think maybe it's slow coming through on here and it's coming through quick up on the actual. Hold on. Oh no, that's strange. That's weird. When I look at YouTube, actually, Aussie Man, all your comments seem to be coming up in a weird order. I can see where is the rest of the chat. Why can't I see them? But then, and then talking about fundamental analysis. But you're saying isn't accumulation manipulation? I know maybe that was when maybe you did ask me that earlier. Sorry if I missed that. Isn't accumulation, manipulation, and expansion the same concept as Wyckoff? Then ICT change the terminology. I don't know. I mean, actually, on that question, I don't know if is accumulation, manipulation, expansion ICT. I thought that was something else, but maybe I'm wrong. But yes, essentially, ICT has dumbed down a lot of the Wyckoff concept, and the smart money concepts also dumbs it down. But the only other thing I like countering that is the Wyckoff, like, because a lot of the smart money forex traders use Wyckoff on the low time frames, but I think I haven't learned Wyckoff extensively. I learned more the patterns and all the background behind it. But somebody, I do remember reading at one point, I'm not sure it was one of his books, that Wyckoff is supposed to be on the very high time frames. And it's supposed to be used very strongly with volume and not just how the pretty chart looks. But you know, even if you think of Wyckoff, you know, and like I've said before, like patterns like head and shoulders and cup and handle and all those things are kind of like, again, cheapened down versions of Wyckoff. So it really is, again, it's at that level of complexity, and like at least Wyckoff, like from my perspective, like liking the deep analysis, has really gone into detail as to, you know, what's happening in the accumulation, manipulation, distribution phases. But yeah, I think those were then taken down to much lower time frames and used with the smart money concept. Maybe it did come from ICT and I just don't know that. And yeah, I see people put those Wyckoff like terminology on like the 5-minute chart, but I don't think that was Wyckoff's intent. If it works, it works. Yeah, it's like, I mean, it's like the ICT, the breaker stuff for me is just is an inverse head and shoulders or a head and shoulders on a low time frame. Like, but then people, I hate the term breaker, it just annoys me, so I don't ever use it. And I have my own version of what I call indirect supply or demand, which kind of covers breakers, but also is a bit more than that. Anyway, yeah, sorry, back to these majors. So DOT and NEAR, I've said for a while that I wanted lower, so obviously NEAR is kind of heading in that direction. DOT has a lot more space. So the confluence is going to be harder on these as well, because, you know, like if you look at DOT here, you know, it does have like 5 or 6 lows in this demand. So it could still pick up support here if it wants, even if other things are hitting other zones. Sol, I think I've said for a while again, I wanted lower, I wanted down on this monthly, taking out these lows under the orange line so we can see what happens when that happens. But yeah, obviously these are now looking like they're wanting to collapse. What are you saying, William? I have never listened to him. I've learnt the markets from better traders than him and have read numerous great books on trading. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, and I also have no respect for anybody who has the arrogance that he has, because I don't think you learn that way. I mean, you can say, you know, and I see it constantly on X, you know, and like when I look at my alerts, right? So like I've shown some of you guys before, like the alerts are coming through. So these are my alerts, and we've had like 8 coming through. So I spend a massive amount of time on the ones that don't work. Huge amount of time. So if these don't work, I spend, like if they work, I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever, moving on. Like if I've traded it myself or not. But where they don't work, I'm always going back, going, why didn't that work? Like wire zones, I spent so much time in supply and demand, like trying to understand why zones don't work. But if I sit there and be all like proud of myself about the ones that do, well, firstly, I probably have a fuck of a lot more followers. but secondly, because that's what people like to see. But secondly, I wouldn't learn anything, and I like to help people, and I enjoy doing these streams. It helps me learn when I do them at the same time. If people ask me questions or if I have to explain things, and it helps me think things through as well when I talk it through. But it would be of no interest to me if all my alerts were just working. Like, so I want to know, like, so when I say alerts that don't work, I know, like, in some cases, like, you know, some of these alerts here that I disclaimed when I gave them, saying I think they're low probability, but I'll put them in anyway so we can see. It's played out that it was low probability and they failed. But you've got to have some aggressive stuff, because obviously at some point the price has to reverse. So you have some preemptive entries and you're just conscious of the risk involved. But yeah, like ICT I just never really liked, because I just think he's so like, I'm amazing, and I'm like, how can you ever learn from your mistakes if you just think you're constantly amazing? And for me, it's all just continuous improvement. I just want to get better at this, and I want to help other people and make money myself. Like, I don't want to sit here and just boast about how wonderful I am when I got something right. And also why I like more things on my chart. As Einstein said, the best way to learn is to explain it to someone. Did he say that? I thought I said that. Maybe I'm Einstein. There's my arrogance. But yeah, 100%. Like, and I said that from the start as well. Like, people used to ask, and it was how I learned. Like, and again, when I was like, the first thing I learned was patterns. That's what everybody was drawing when I first got into this space. It was everything on crypto was a triangle or a head and shoulders or a cup and handle. But I used to get kicked out of groups because I would say, why does that triangle mean it's going up? Like, people would draw a triangle. I'll find an example now, but people would, like, you know, there would literally be people with the most basic charts in all over Telegram with, you know, where they would have drawn, like, here's a great example of one that didn't work, where they would have drawn like this, and then they would draw an arrow. And then I'd go into their groups and I'd be like, why does that triangle mean it's going up? And then they would kick me out of the group. I got kicked out of so many groups because I questioned them. Because I'd be like, why does that triangle mean it's going up? And through that kind of learning and analysis, like, I then figured out what makes a good triangle and what makes a bad triangle. And why some triangles go up and other triangles don't go up. But yeah, if you don't question anything, and then yeah, so then similarly, people would say to me, you know, that's a head and shoulders. I'd be like, no, it's not. You know, so I'd get somebody coming into my group going, this is a head and shoulders. And I'd be like, no, it's not a head and shoulders. And they would say, why not? And I'm like, well, because it's sloping down neckline. Okay, well, it's got an up neckline here, that's good, but the right shoulder is lower than the left shoulder. Stick volume on it. I haven't got volume on this chart, but, you know, then you would see, I would be like, well, the volume here doesn't support. And then, you know, it would fail because I actually understood what made a head and shoulders and what made a good one and what made a bad one. It's the same as supply and demand. It's like trying to learn what makes a good supply and what makes a good demand. It's not just having the lines on the chart. But if you want to blindly trade the lines, that's entirely up to you as well. Anyway, we digress. So DOT, coming down to this 3-day demand yet again for the millionth time. As I've said, even at this one, I said I didn't want to trade it because it's hit too many times and I expect it to break. It's taken its sweet time, but I'm still expecting it to break. Near exactly the same. And then it's going to have a 3-month demand down here. Which hopefully is, some old zones still in there. Hopefully it will hold the bounce off the top of it. But again, as I said a minute ago, these are all lower high scenarios. These all can still break down, and we've seen a lot of that on other alts. So while the majors are still looking tolerable, a lot of the other alts, you don't trust patterns, they are subjective, and they don't make sense to you. You know, actually they will make sense to you. If I explained it to you, then I would hope they would. But they do actually make sense, because you have to think, again, you're thinking of the accumulation manipulation thing. It's thinking about and supply and demand, but think about where the orders are. They're very subjective, yes, as far as just if you're just going to draw a triangle or draw a head and shoulders, but they actually make a lot of sense if you think them through. If you think about what's happening and what the price is doing and what the buyers and sellers are doing inside the pattern, then they actually make a lot of sense. And to me, like when I look at people like ICT, and exactly what you just said on Wyckoff versus accumulation, manipulation, distribution, a lot of these things are just bastardizations of the people who really properly studied this, not people like, you know, me who's been doing it for 8 years, or you know, ICT who's been maybe doing it a little bit longer than me, I don't know. It's not people like us, it's people who actually like the old masters, the original TA masters, who I think really properly studied this, and they really had to because they didn't have computers. You know, those patterns, like that's where it all comes from, and it's all just how buyers and sellers are operating and how the price is compressing, and you know, the buy-sell battle and all that sort of stuff. So I find it like super fascinating. But yeah, so but I also agree with, from the perspective, they are so subjective. If you are just drawing a triangle, then yes, 100% subjective. But if you're thinking about what the candles are doing inside the triangle, then they're really, really valuable. But I don't see decent ones a lot, so I don't trade them a lot. Anyway, so that's near and Sol. Yeah, I already said I want lower. So near, Sol and dot, those are the zones I'm interested in. Dot obviously is probably potentially a bit too far away. And then atom, which is just obviously remains the bane of my existence. So I said I wanted to put a short in here because it had 3 months supply and it was going to be the first to hit it. But it was the one I was most nervous of because of these trendline stops and the possibility that it was going to pull in EOS and do a breakout. So I think I had the alert was like, watch the daily supply. So it has come through that daily. Yeah, so it's not something I want to short, even though it's 3 months supply. I'm still very much in two minds about this. Like lower time frame, I would still like it to go up. It would be nice if it comes and bounces in here. But the higher time frame and the fact it's 3 months supply does make me quite nervous of looking for longs on this. You know, so having said that, I did set an alert for this daily, but I wasn't willing to be as aggressive as like looking for longs on this 4 hour up here. So thankfully, because it's now going down inside it. Like if you see EOS, so it's kind of like, and in fact EOS did this last weekend as well. So we can, you know, you can keep an eye on Atom and just see what it gives over the next couple of days. So EOS was kind of the same. You know, it had this wick up that went halfway into this trend line, the same as Atom did, and then it came and retraced, and then it, you know, it tried to break down, but then it bounced again, had the rejection off the top of the drop, but then did pick up, and then you started to see the 8 and 12 hour build up, and that was Monday, Tuesday. So do keep an eye on Atom if you want, but just be conscious. So just see what it gives in here through Monday, Tuesday on the 8 and 12 hour. Like if it gives you 8 or 12 hour demand, then great. But yeah, just be a little bit conscious that this is on that 3 month supply. Anyway, so what have we been going 2 hours now, go me, which is also why I can't speak. So I was going to go over the alerts, so I didn't have many. I had quite a few on Friday, then very few yesterday, so I had a very short list, but then now today it's like really heavily picked up. So did I not refresh? Maybe I did refresh this page. Yeah, so I don't know, I don't really want to do another hour of going through these now, I don't think. Let me just check my message. Apparently I haven't got dinner, so I need to sort my dinner out as well, and it's 7 o'clock. So yeah, I think I might do another stream and go over these tomorrow. The couple, just so from a long, but everything, as I've always said, is the short, my short bias. The only couple that I liked from a long perspective, other than maybe guessing maybe we're going to get higher lows, was this ale. So I had the alert on there on, when was that, Friday? So unfortunately, yeah, I didn't manage to stream about that. And then we've just had this test here. So this, there was an 8 hour demand that I had alerted, but I hadn't actually confirmed when the alert went. it has now confirmed, and this is still very high risk because of the fact, obviously, it's completely new. But like, I liked at least the fact it didn't have supply. Like, it's only got like an 8-12 hour supply up there. It's got the rejection off it, and it's made a higher low. So these are the bits these are the price action kind of things that I'm finding really difficult at the moment, though. Like, we're getting a lot of stuff like this that's, you know, it gets the bounce, it gets up into supply, it bounces in here, and then it just goes. So do run the risk of that. But I at least just like the fact that this has only got a 12-hour supply. You know, the ones I'm seeing more, as I just described, you know, have got a weekly here or something like that. So this is something that's worth keeping an eye on. And from a long side, go mining as well. So this I'm always kind of, so this is what was always one of the more bullish charts. Overarchingly, it's kind of now dying off a little bit, but just it has come into 3-month demand here. It did already test that. It's got an annual a little bit lower. I will like this a lot less if it creates a new monthly supply in there, but at the moment it hasn't got monthly supply, and at the moment also it's got a decent enough drop that I feel like it could run back up through. So yeah, and this is an example of what I said a minute ago. So we got to bounce off this monthly demand at the start. You know, it went up, it rejected weekly supply, and I was like, okay, maybe we'll get a higher low in here, but no, it's just run back through it into the next demand. So, but yeah, it's had that, it actually hasn't quite tapped that 3-month level, but yeah, this is something that's worth watching on the high time frame, because again, it's just one of the most bullish charts across the whole market. But I don't know, it was, I say, actually it's less so now, kind of it's coming down, but it is in a 3-month demand, so keep an eye on that. SPA was for a short, so this was one of the, I think we didn't get many shorts. Most of these that have come in have been long possibilities, and obviously high risk, so SPA, yeah, it's probably too late now, so that did go up into monthly supply there. So that would have been a nice short. But yeah, you can see what it gets. Again, like my nervousness a little bit on these is, as I've said, you know, are we going to go through these trend line stops? But in this case, it's got a kind of a neat rejection off there. So I think some of these that came, the alerts, we've got the initial bounce, and again, it's just straight back up into supply. So it's just very hard to know if it's going to pick up a higher low or not. RSI was the other one, although that looks 10% down, I'm not sure. So this again was one I was more bullish on. It 6-month demand on Hobie at the lows. It made a monthly demand, it bounced in that and made a new high, and now it's retesting. It's got a new, it's a 2-month demand here. It hit the 3-week demand inside it. Yes, it might break down like everything else, but at the moment it's still in, you know, it's kind of still holding okay. So it did come off into weekly supply here. I kind of wanted, like, I really actually wanted this to make a new weekly demand, but I think now, I guess now we've actually had, like, wait for the next few hours, see if this makes a new weekly demand, because that will make a good potential long tomorrow or the next day. Yeah, so again, like, so I had an aggressive long entry on this on daily demand because I spotted it yesterday, so that got a decent move. And again, it's just exactly how I just described with all the others. It's like, is this now going to hold here and continue to make a move up, or is this just going to die, having come off weekly supply, daily, bounced on daily demand, sure, but come off daily supply, is it now just going to die? I'm not sure, so it's that kind of moment of truth. This, I think I had the alert for 8 hour, and this does actually have a clean 12-hour demand there. But situation a bit uncertain, so I think, you know, again, you can keep an eye on this now if you want, but what I would really like on this is to see it make a weekly demand, and then I might be quite bullish on this. Other than that, I really just need to go back through everything to see, like, where the sort of 3-month demands are, and that sort of, where the 3-month supplies are, and if anything's going to make a new weekly demand this week. So like I say, something like this, you know, it's close, but it's now on the cusp of wanting to break down. But from a long perspective, I'm still just generally not confident. Like, everything's looking pretty red. This is I managed to split my watch list. This was all the stuff that I went over last week. And then this new section is the new stuff that's come in since last week, and on a couple of the others that I reset from last week, I've re-added here. But obviously everything's looking pretty red. Yeah, so again, just shorting all the bounces really is the kind of expectation. and then just praying that some of these bigger demands are actually going to pick up as support. Anyway, given my voice is failing, I think I'm going to sign off. Anybody have any other questions? If you guys are still there, I'm not sure. We've gone quiet for the last few minutes. Let me see where Bitcoin's at, whether it's blasted through my 30-minute. Oh yeah, look, there it has. Okay, so it's come through the 30-minute. It's taken out, where are we? Low. It's obviously tapping that wall at 80k. Yeah, so you can see it's tapping into the wall there. And then occasionally I'll go to the, do I have it open? Not that. So I occasionally go to this website, Okotoki it's called. I don't think I've shared this on the stream before. If it wants to load. So this, again, they had a nice version for free and then they made it paid. I didn't want to pay for this, it wasn't good enough for me to pay for. But you can still see some of it, so you can't see all the exchanges, but you can still see. So it shows you, again, like it's just the order books alongside each other for Coinbase, Bitstamp, BitMEX, Bitfinex and Binance. So what you can sometimes at least come in here and watch the walls being eaten or not eaten and see how big they are. Again, if you haven't got access to any of the paid data. So yes, I can see like on Binance it's kind of getting eaten. And then there are decent sized walls that just each every $1,000 on that. And then Coinbase has a 200 Bitcoin at 79k and it's still sort of trying to hold at the 80k wall. Yeah, so sometimes I'll come and watch this and see if the walls are getting eaten or not. Because you can see them with this very small writing, so I don't know if you can see here, but you can see the kind of walls increasing or decreasing in size. And then I can't remember where the liquidity was. Okay, so yeah, the liquidity would have been taken on Binance, and Bybit was a little bit lower. No worries, Aussie man, have a good night. Yeah, so obviously, like as I said on Bybit, we went through all those walls, but yeah, it's still holding that 80k level, so that was where I wanted it to bloody test for God knows how long. So yeah, obviously to come a little bit through that 30-minute, and still just holding above that higher low there and on this daily demand, but yeah, it might possibly come through that now. Anyway, not a high probability zone, but you can keep an eye on that, like if it gives you something. So what I would be looking at now is, is the 15-minute or the 10-minute or the 5-minute, depending on how aggressive I'm feeling, giving me an entry for to go into a long here. But you have like time, like I don't FOMO straight into these. I'm just like, okay, it's hit a zone I'm interested in. What's it doing in that zone? Is it doing anything useful? Is there a swing fail? Like if I could wait till it goes above this 81 level for a swing fail, is it worth me waiting to go up there? So I've got a proper invalidation. Are the stops that it could go for above? In this case, yes. When's CME going to open? There's all these other factors that I would just think about. And then yeah, so Ether, as we expected, has come down deeper because Bitcoin wasn't ready, and it's come down to where that CME 3-week level is, which is interesting. So just need to see if this kind of hangs out here for the rest of the day. It's got a 3-month flip level there. I really don't want to see that 3-month flipped into supply actually. I don't mean to delete that. Let me just show you that on the other chart. So on the Ether chart, not into supply, into resistance. So and all into supply, but we've got until June till that happens. So this is that 3-month level. So obviously that can be picked up as support if it wants to inside this zone. So previously I wanted 1600 because that's where the daily is inside there. But yeah, like what I really wouldn't want to see is this 1671 level flipped into resistance. And then that black dash level is just where the CME 3-week level is. So I thought this would come a bit deeper in here. Obviously we're going to have closed that old CME gap from previously, assuming we stay down here till CME opens in a couple of hours. But yeah, anyway, I think it's time for me to sign off and go and get some dinner. Let me just see if there's anything other comments in the chat. No, we're all good. Okay, so I hope that was useful. A nice chatting to you both. I appreciate having had people on here chatting to me. That's always nice. And yeah, and I will do another stream on alts tomorrow, and I can get on top of those where those new alerts have come in from, and just let the market settle down a bit before FOMOing into any longs. But yeah, have a good evening, happy Sunday, happy weekend.